The cul-de-sac at the end of Maple Drive was a serene little corner of the world, where the lawns were uniformly green and the mailboxes stood like soldiers at attention. My modest home sat nestled among them, blending seamlessly into the landscape. It was a place of whispered breezes and distant lawn mowers, of sprinklers and Sunday barbecues, until the flagpole. It started innocently enough, a sturdy tribute to my late father, a veteran who instilled in me a reverence for the stars and stripes. The flagpole rose with quiet dignity from the corner of my front yard, a sentry against the chaos of the world. But, as it turned out, its presence was not as innocuous as I imagined. Karen, president of the Homeowners Association, was the self-appointed guardian of our neighborhood's aesthetic. Her house stood directly across from mine, a pristine monument to suburban perfection. Her window treatments were symmetrical, her hedges meticulously sculpted, and her gaze, when fixed upon the flagpole, was sharp enough to cut glass. The first inkling of her discontent arrived in the form of a neatly typed note on pale pink stationery. "Dear neighbor," it began, in a script that looped with precision. "Your recent addition does not comply with HOA regulations. Please rectify at your earliest convenience." I could almost hear her clipped tone in the precise keystrokes. There was no malice in my heart, only a quiet resolve. Regulations were vague, and I'd done my research. But there was something almost whimsical in the idea that a flag could upset the balance of our little world. So I responded in kind. A respectful note, a subtle reminder of Article 7, Section C, the one that allowed patriotic displays in moderation. Days passed. The flag fluttered, and Karen's glare intensified. Yet, my spirits remained unruffled. I watched her prowl the neighborhood, clipboard in hand, a hawk circling its territory. Her mission was clear: to restore order, to preserve the status quo. But the flagpole stood resolute, indifferent to her silent tirades. Yet, life proceeded with its usual rhythm. Morning coffee on the porch, the scent of fresh-cut grass mingling with the crisp dawn air. A sense of anticipation lingered, a quiet undercurrent beneath the surface of our routine lives. It was the anticipation of a storm, the kind that builds and swirls, gathering strength with each passing day. Karen's next move was predictable, an official letter from the HOA stamped and sealed. It arrived with the Morning Post, a harbinger of bureaucratic displeasure. The words were formal, the language clipped and precise. "Non-compliance will result in a fine," it declared, an ultimatum couched in the genteel language of authority. I sipped my coffee, contemplating the missive as sunlight danced over the flag in its measured cadence. I could almost sense the neighborhood holding its collective breath, waiting for the scales to tip, for resolution or retaliation. The irony was palpable. A simple flagpole had become a symbol of resistance, a line drawn in the well-manicured sand. A plan unfurled in my mind, as clear as the morning sky. The bylaws themselves would become my banner, a testament to quiet defiance. As Karen's eyes bore into my back from across the street, I could almost hear the gears of inevitability turning. My next move would be bold, unexpected, a twist in the tale she had hoped to control. And so, the stage was set for the next act, where an ordinary man could challenge the rigid confines of conformity, with nothing more than patience, a bit of fabric, and the unyielding pulse of inevitability. The flagpole, my silent protest, had not gone unnoticed. Its proud silhouette against the sky was a beacon of rebellion, a fluttering testament to defiance that whispered truths between the rustling leaves. But Karen, with eyes as sharp as a hawk's and a disposition to match, had taken it personally. The mailbox told tales of her growing displeasure, letters from the HOA, marked with her unmistakable flourish. The first few were polite, devilishly so, dressed in the garments of neighborly concern. But the tone soon changed. Accusations of non-compliance, veiled threats of fines, and citations that cited the obscurest of bylaws rained upon my doorstep, each one a brick in the wall she intended to build around my rebellion. Karen, it seemed, had a penchant for escalation. Her world was one of rules and order, a symphony conducted to her liking. My flagpole was an unruly instrument in her orchestra, and she was determined to silence it. She prowled the streets with a notebook, eyes scanning for infractions. Grass too long, citation, a garden gnome askew, warning. It was as if the neighborhood had turned into a stage, and we, unwitting actors in her drama of control. Her favorite role, however, was that of the messenger, delivering tales of dissent with the glee of a carnival barker. Gossip spread like wildfire. The whispers were windborne, slipping through windows and under doors, murmuring of my defiance and Karen's crusade. Neighbors, once amiable, now watched from behind curtains, their eyes flickering with judgment or amusement, depending on where their allegiances lay. Some admired the audacity, the boldness of my banner, while others clung to Karen's doctrine, fearing the wrath of her ever-watchful gaze. The absurdity of it all was almost comical. Rules were pulled from the depths of the HOA Bylaws, ones that seemed to have been forgotten by time itself. Yet, here they were again, dusted off and wielded like weapons in Karen's campaign. I imagined her at home, poring over the documents, fingers dancing over the pages in search of the next ordinance to enforce. My resolve, however, remained unshaken. Each citation a badge of honor, each whisper a gust that only made my banner flutter higher. I would not bow to the tyranny of triviality. The HOA bylaws, now emblazoned in defiant script on my 30-foot banner, were a testament not just to my rights, but to the absurdity of Karen's quest. They were a mirror, reflecting her folly in stark relief against the azure sky. And so, the dance continued. Karen, the puppet master, orchestrating her symphony of control, and me, the reluctant performer, standing firm on my stage of grass and rebellion. We were locked in a silent battle, a clash of wills that played out beneath the watchful eyes of suburban spires. In the quiet of my home, I pondered the path forward. Karen's vision of order was not my prison. The flagpole, stripped of its literal purpose, had become a beacon of a different sort, an emblem of freedom, of standing tall against the tides of conformity. Life, I mused, should be lived as boldly as that banner flew. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the yard, I felt the stirrings of a plan unfurling within me. A new chapter in our unspoken saga, yet to be written, but promising in its potential. Karen would escalate, of that I was certain, but so too would I respond. The stage was set for the next act, and the curtain, in the form of that 30-foot banner, was ready to rise again. The days following Karen's latest tirade unfolded like a meticulous dance, each step calculated and purposeful. I felt a quiet thrill in the air, the kind that comes before a storm. Her disapproving glare lingered in my mind, a constant reminder of the battle she waged against my languid flagpole, waving proudly in defiance of her narrow world view. I began to collect every scrap of evidence, each typed memo, each pointed email, every redundant rule of the HOA bylaws. They became my arsenal. I meticulously organized them, a silent nod to the calm before the tempest. I documented everything. Each time Karen's manicured finger graced my doorbell, each time her voice climbed to a shrill crescendo laced with thinly veiled threats. My pen danced across pages, capturing the essence of her disdain, her unyielding pursuit of conformity. The bylaws themselves were a marvel of bureaucratic absurdity. Written in dry legalese, they were a monument to the mundane. Within them, however, lay my salvation. The overlooked, the underlined, the misinterpreted clauses. I pored over them, unraveling their secrets like a patient cryptographer. In their tangled verbiage, I found a surprising ally. Rules, after all, are but chains to bind those who follow blindly. The plan unfolded with a practiced elegance. A 30-foot banner, white as a dove, was meticulously prepared. Each letter, a bold proclamation against the tyranny of the petty, was carefully painted. The words danced across the fabric, an ironic mockery of the very rules Karen held so dear. The morning dawned with a contemplative serenity. The sky was a canvas of soft blues and golden hues, as if nature itself conspired with me. I reveled in the anticipation, my heart a steady drumbeat, guiding me through the orchestration of my defiance. The flagpole stood resolute, a silent sentinel in the face of impending drama. With deliberate care, I unfurled the banner, watching as it caught the gentle breeze. It rose majestically, unfurling its truths for all to see. The bylaws, those dry dictums, became a tapestry of resistance. There was an art to its placement, the banner visible from every corner of the street, an omnipresent reminder of the absurdity Karen championed. Cars slowed as they passed, drivers craning their necks to read the words that fluttered in the breeze. Neighbors emerged, drawn by the spectacle of my defiance. Karen's reaction was everything I anticipated. Her face, a canvas of indignation and disbelief, was a masterpiece of expression. A single line of dialogue slipped past her lips, a final, impotent protest. "This isn't over." I watched her retreat, back to her pristine fortress of judgment, knowing the battle had taken a new dimension. In the days that followed, my banner became a symbol, an emblem of quiet rebellion, an invitation to question the status quo. Conversations sprouted, unlikely alliances formed. It was the beginning of something larger than a mere neighborhood spat. Quiet power is a formidable thing. In the face of conformity, it thrives, unfurling the hidden potential within us all. The banner, with its ironies woven into fabric, gently swayed in the wind. It whispered truths, challenged norms, and dared others to see beyond the manicured lawns and pristine facades. And so, the dance continued, each step a reminder that even the smallest acts of defiance can ripple outward, changing the fabric of our lives in subtle, profound ways. The silence after the banner unveiling was thicker than molasses in January. Karen's face, once a portrait of smug satisfaction, now looked as though it had been sculpted by shock itself. I could see her trying to process the words emblazoned on the fabric billowing above. Each clause of the HOA Bylaws rippling like a flag of rebellion in the gentle morning breeze. The irony wasn't lost on me. Karen, the self-appointed arbiter of neighborhood aesthetics, was now faced with a tableau she could neither erase nor ignore. I had taken her weapon of choice, the bylaws, and turned it into a spectacle that could be seen from every corner of the cul-de-sac. It was a tapestry of rules she'd wielded like a sword, now laid bare for the whole community to scrutinize. The banner was a bold shade of crimson, the color of defiance and resolve, stark against the clear blue sky. It hung like a curtain of truth, challenging anyone who dared to judge without understanding. And it was perfectly legal. The bylaws didn't dictate the size or message of personal banners, as long as they were tastefully mounted and did not contain offensive language. My message was as civil as it was pointed. Karen's initial affront was palpable, an almost visible aura of disbelief and indignation. But I felt a calm resolve settle over me. This wasn't about revenge. It was about revelation. The neighborhood whispered around me, curious eyes peeking through curtains and glancing over hedges. In those moments, I felt the power of quiet resistance. My only audience was the open sky and the silent, knowing nods of neighbors who had grown weary of Karen's reign. I didn't need to say a word, the message was clear. The bylaws weren't her personal weapon. They belonged to all of us, and they were meant to protect, not persecute. As the sun shifted, casting shadows that danced playfully across the ground, I noticed a small gathering beginning to form at the end of the street. There was a subtle shift in the air, a sense of solidarity that had been missing for too long. Neighbors who had once been strangers were now co-conspirators in a silent coup of civility. A few days later, the next HOA meeting was more crowded than usual. People had questions, not just about my banner, but about other decisions that had gone unquestioned for too long. Karen sat at the head of the table, the usual certainty in her posture now slightly tinged with caution. Her eyes met mine across the room, and I saw something shift there. Not quite defeat, but perhaps a realization that the neighborhood was not hers to command. In the weeks that followed, the banner came down, its purpose fulfilled. The bylaws remained, but they had lost their teeth, now seen as guidelines rather than gospel. And Karen? She was quieter, more reserved, her edges softened by the tide of community that had risen around her. I found a new flagpole, simpler, more understated. The stars and stripes waved proudly once again, a silent testament to resistance and the quiet power of standing firm. The sun began its descent, casting elongated shadows across the neighborhood streets. The flagpole, tall, proud, and now infamous, stood resolute against the sky. It had become a symbol, a silent sentinel in a battleground of suburban politics. As I gazed at the banner flapping in the gentle breeze, I felt a calm satisfaction, like the first sip of coffee on a cold morning. The banner was a masterpiece of irony and defiance. I had spent countless hours ensuring every word of the HOA bylaws was legible, each clause an indictment of those who wielded them like weapons. Karen had made her stand on these rules, but in the end, they proved her undoing. The community had gathered in clusters, eyes fixed on the spectacle, whispers and chuckles passing between them like an electric current. Karen's absence was conspicuous. Perhaps she was lurking behind her drapes, every twitch of the fabric betraying her presence, or perhaps she had retreated, seeking solace in another realm of order and precision. Her reign of meticulous terror was ending, not with a bang, but with a swish of fabric and collective enlightenment. The neighborhood had changed. It was subtle, like the slow opening of a flower that had been reluctant to bloom. There was a camaraderie born of mutual struggle and a shared antagonist. Slowly, they began to see the absurdity of it all, the trivialities that had consumed them under Karen's vigilant eye. As I walked among them, I felt their nods of approval and the newfound ease in their laughter. The realization that this was not merely my stand but ours brought a warmth that spread through my chest. It was as though we had reclaimed something intangible, a sense of community, of humanity, that had been stifled under the weight of regulations and dictates. My flagpole had been the catalyst, a beacon that signaled the beginning of the end for Karen's reign. The bylaws had turned from her shield into her sword, cutting through the illusion of power she wielded. In this irony lay a deep satisfaction, a justice that was poetic in its delivery. As dusk settled, the banner took on an almost ethereal glow, illuminated by the streetlights. It seemed to hover there, a ghostly reminder of the battle fought and the victory won. The night air was cool, soothing the day's tension, and I stood there, a silent guardian over our newly liberated domain. In the days that followed, Karen was rarely seen. Her influence waned, and with it, her power to intimidate. The neighborhood breathed easier, like a patient recovering from a long illness. Gardens were tended to, children played freely, and conversations turned to brighter topics. I often caught sight of the banner's reflection in the windows of passing cars, a fleeting reminder of our little rebellion. It served as a testament to resilience, a lesson that even the smallest acts of defiance can ripple outward, resonating with those ready to embrace change. The flagpole remained, a permanent fixture now, not just in my yard, but in the collective memory of the community. It was more than metal and cloth. It was a monument to the spirit of those who refused to be cowed, to those who found strength in unity and humor in the face of pettiness. In the end, the battle had been worth it. Karen had been sidelined, her grip loosened by her own devices. The bylaws flew proudly, not as a sign of submission, but as a banner of victory. They were our words now, and we had reclaimed them.